Hi, Lucy Jones. I just want to say thank you to everyone today. Also, thank you to David for your comments about, you know, not only the kind of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism that we're facing today, but also from within those minorities. You know, there's equally kind of racism and authoritarianism, and I think that's an important thing to think about. Now, I also just want to make a quick comment about the kind of nuance. We had Saeed Ouasi talk the other day, and she's riled quite a few people with her comments for various reasons. About Islamophobia. Now, absolutely, you know, this is one of the kind of massive problems we're facing today. But she riled people for some reasons on the basis that they felt that the finger was being pointed at them and they were being blamed. You know, we're lucky to grow up in Britain and to live in Britain, which is actually at large a very open and tolerant society. I think we kind of need to pay tribute to that. You know, it's not everyone that's kind of supporting this kind of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and I want to kind of raise that as an issue and raise the kind of idea of nuance. I've got a friend of mine who, I live in Streatham, I've been born and bred in South London, and she's walking down the street in jeans and a jumper. She got spat on by some, I think they were Salafi Muslims. Another friend of mine was going to the pub in Birmingham. He's a white chap, you know, and he got racially abused by some Pakistani men. Now, I'm by no means saying that this is a systematic or endemic, as you know, we're seeing Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. I just think it's important to also point out the nuance, and also to say that we're very lucky to be able to have these conversations that we're having here today, because of the, you know, communities and the kind of political framework I think we have in the UK.
Thank you. There's a question just there, and then we'll come over to see you. So.
Thank you very much for this day. It was amazing to hear all the panelists. Just to reaffirm one of the points that was raised right now, was that one of the problems in terms of funding, for instance, I'm working on Iranian women's movement, and when speaking about fundings, one of the interesting things is that the groups that are working against fundamentalism in Iran are constantly being offered huge fundings from right-wing, institutions, you name it, governmental, semi-governmental institutions in Europe. So when speaking about global-local interconnections, interrelation, that I thought was very interesting. So on the one hand, people who are working locally really don't know about the discourses and the issues that is right now current in Europe. And they might not have any understanding also about the nature of those organizations that are giving away funding. So that also plays into the fact that what is the, you know, who among us has that knowledge that knows a context, a local context, but as well knows the issues on a global scale. For instance, about the racism and right-wing, groups in Europe who try to co-opt the opposition groups that are grassroots in, for instance, a country like Iran. That is one thing. And another thing is, again, the role of diaspora, again, referring to Iran. The Iranian diaspora tends to be mostly secularist. Not a surprise, because those are the ones who had to leave the country. But at times during my field work, I realized that actually they are the main contributors to Islamophobia as far as it regards the US, because they have had to leave the country, flee fundamentalism, and they are so angry that their rhetoric, in a way, without them realizing it, it comes from their positionality, and they're rightfully so, because they have lost everything there and had to flee. But their rhetoric on a global scale contributes to Islamophobia, for instance, in Europe. So I think it's also interesting to see the same thing that we were saying within a community, how those power relations work, considering that the community, for instance, in the US, happens to be a very well-off community of Iranians that are considered also Muslim, by the way, which they don't, identify as.
Thanks, Lynn. Just we didn't catch your name. See you.
I'm Lady from SOAS.
Okay, hi, Lady. Lady.
Lady.
Okay. I'm conscious of time, so we have this one question here, and I think we might have to hand up for this round, otherwise I'll forget all the questions. So maybe back there in the green jumper.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank all the panelists today. I think I learned a lot about some things that I didn't think that would be addressed, but it's interesting from a student perspective to just hear all the comments and see what things are quite pertinent here in the UK. As the day was progressing and I was thinking and trying to kind of digest some of the things, I realized I thought it would be kind of important to kind of understand the context and the importance of kind of defining and addressing a couple of things that were kind of talked about here, particularly Islamophobia, racism, and in the UK and in a European context, and like the relational power structures and how that kind of impacts and informs those things. I know there's no general definition, but I think it would be quite important, maybe that's just for me, to kind of have a context of what that actually looks like and where it comes from, because from my perspective, it's a little different being American, like listening to all of these things. It's the histories are the definitions, the histories and how they're addressed are very different in our past as well as present. So that would be kind of helpful. Also, I think in addressing the race aspect, I think it would bring more discourse as to like the larger issues of like nation states and identity, like race and exclusion versus identity, and how to bridge the various communities to kind of maybe address some of the challenges. And like Lady said, I think the roles of diasporas are extremely important in defining some of the phenomena, as well as working with like some of these issues. And like Phil said, I think it's important to kind of see how this can, how from this information we can have some type of framework or something to kind of to look at and go from. So those are just some of my observations. Thank you.
And your name? Your name? Sorry.
Oh, Halima.
Hi, Halima.